everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about 1991's Thelma and Louise and its brand new Criterion 4K Blu-ray that just came out. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, lists, and podcasts, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing helps this channel out more than by you simply liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Thelma and Louise was released in 1991. It's directed by Ridley Scott, stars Susan Sarandon and Geena Davis. It features Brad Pitt, Harvey Keitel, Michael Madsen, Stephen Tobolowsky, and Christopher McDonald, and many more actors that appear in this film. So Thelma and Louise are a pair of friends who decide they want to get away for the weekend. Louise works at a coffee shop. She's not really the happiest woman. We don't really know why. She's friends with Thelma, who's an unhappy housewife. She's married to Christopher McDonald, who's just a terrible husband, but he plays his part fantastically in this movie. He's extremely funny.
Jesus! God damn it, Homer! Christ, I gotta get to work. Need this bullshit in the morning.
He's just a piece of crap husband. Everything he does gets under his wife's skin. He doesn't really care about her. He just sees her as an object. And that's a big part of this movie as well, is how men treat women, because this movie really takes off once Thelma and Louise hit the road. Thelma doesn't tell Christopher McDonald that she's leaving. She's finally just fed up with all his bullshit. She heads out with Louise. They head out on the road. The first place they stop up, they get some food, they get some drinks in them, and then unfortunately this piece of crap guy decides he's going to rape Thelma. Now Louise, we don't know too much about her backstory yet, but she decides, alright, well, this guy has got to go, because he's still mouthing off even after Louise saves Thelma from being raped. So she shoots him in one of the most shocking scenes. I really like, even though I know it's coming, the way that it's shot, it just feels so real. You know, you see Louise's hand just shaking. Susan Sarandon plays the part perfectly, and they're just scared, and they just get on the road. They don't know what to do. You know, this is a situation that Thelma never expected to be in. Now Louise looks like she can handle this. She looks like she's got it all under control. And they head out on their way, and this basically just becomes a road trip movie. These two are on the run. Harvey Keitel plays this very sympathetic cop who just feels bad. He feels like these two aren't killers. There's something more to the story. So he's trying to uncover the mystery of this, while also, unfortunately, he has to do his job. Stephen Tobolowsky is in this as well, playing another great little role for him. That's kind of what he did. He just pops up in movies. He's one of those great character actors. He plays his role really well in this. And my really only complaint about this movie, because let me just say it right now, this is a 5-star film directed by Ridley Scott. My only complaint about this movie is Harvey Keitel's accent. Harvey Keitel plays his character perfect. He's a very sympathetic cop. He does seem like he cares. He plays that part perfectly. He seems like he just has a genuine heart. He also seems to have a more understanding of what these people are going through compared to the rest of the law enforcement that are involved. Even Christopher McDonald, Thelma's husband, doesn't seem to care as much as Harvey Keitel's character does. So that's my real only complaint, is somebody should have just told him to not do this accent in this movie, because in certain scenes, when he's got big monologues, he kind of goes in and out of it.
Girls out there that had a chance. They had a chance. And now you've screwed it up with them.
I don't understand that. You know, back in the early 90s, Harvey Keitel was playing around with some accents because this was kind of the renaissance of him. He also does appear naked in a few films in the early 90s, which, you know what? Good for him. I'm glad he was confident in himself, but I feel like he was just trying things out as an actor in the early 90s, and someone should have stepped in and been like, we don't need the accent. You're doing a great job. Just drop the accent. So that's my only complaint about this movie. From being a 5-star film, you can give it like a 4.99999, because it's just that good of a movie throughout. It's even funny. It's got some great comedic moments in this movie. But it's just bouncing around between so many different genres. Each one handled it perfectly. You get Brad Pitt in this movie, basically doing the exact same voice he would do in True Romance a few years later with Ridley Scott's brother, Tony Scott. And while I was watching this movie, this feels like the most Tony Scott, Ridley Scott movie that I've ever seen. The cinematography in this movie is beautiful. Some of the best cinematography I have ever seen. It's one of my favorites. It kind of features this like very faded look to it, or almost like blown out look, where the colors never really pop. They just kind of look a little bit faded. Early in the movie, you can see a Ryder truck in the background, and if everyone knows Ryder trucks, they got this like very bright yellow color to them. In this movie, it almost looks like a flat yellow. All the colors are flat. But that also kind of is how Tony Scott's movies kind of looked in the early 90s. If you look back at movies like Days of Thunder or even True Romance that came out a couple of years later, you kind of get those fade-in shots, like where the cloud, like when the sun's setting and the clouds are like purple and orange and they're coming in from the top of the screen. You see that in a lot of Tony Scott movies. So I feel like Ridley Scott kind of was inspired by his brother when he was making this movie. Also, it features one of my favorite Hans Zimmer scores. Hans Zimmer in the early 90s, another one that was firing on all cylinders. He did the score for Days of Thunder. and he did the score for True Romance. And this one, I think, is the best of the three of them, even though I love all three of those scores. And from what I understand, Hans Zimmer wasn't a big fan of his work around this time because of he was relying on the synthesizer, which obviously, if you guys know Hans Zimmer now, and he works a lot with Christopher Nolan, that's kind of not his forte anymore. I understand that it was kind of a different time, and a lot of people don't appreciate synth scores, but I'm a huge fan of them, and I'm really glad that it was featured in this movie with that. Also, it just has a great soundtrack in general when it comes to licensed music. All the songs that are chosen in this movie are all fantastic. This movie moves along at a great pace. You're never bored. All the characters in this movie are played perfectly, and they're playing with our expectations with the characters. You know, everybody who seems like they would be a good person actually turns out to not be a good person. Or anybody who seems like they're not a great person, seems like they would probably be the ones who seem like they would be the pieces of crap, actually turn out not to be. Like Harvey Keitel, you know, you don't really trust the cops, but he's the most genuine person in this movie. Michael Madsen's character, you know, you see these like flashes of anger in him, but he genuinely cares about Louise. He loves Louise. You know, he kind of plays his character like, yeah, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He probably does suffer from some anger issues, but he really is a genuine person. And those are the characters who you would expect not to be. And then you have Brad Pitt's character, you know, the guy who tries to rape Thelma. Like, those characters, they start out so charming and nice, and they're just kind of taking advantage of Geena Davis's Thelma character because she was just such a cooped up housewife that she's just, you know, finally getting to spread her wings, and she's willing to try anything. I mean, in this movie, she actually holds up a convenience store, stuff that she would never do. This was just a regular housewife. Louise, she does have a little bit of a backstory that they flesh out throughout this movie, and that's why she's so untrusting of other people. That's why she's really the stern one in this relationship. She kind of takes care of Geena Davis's character because she's been through the ringer, whereas Thelma's just kind of been with Christopher McDonald her whole life. She doesn't know what the world really is. Louise is out here trying to make her realize that these people out here, they can be monsters. They'll take advantage of you, even though Geena Davis is the one who actually brings the gun with them, so she must be a little bit skeptical of the world herself, but probably based on what she's seen on TV. But overall, this is a fantastic film. Like I said earlier, it's a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. It's not Ridley Scott's best film, but the guy has also made two of my personal favorite films of all time in Alien and Blade Runner. You know, this would be his number 3 film, and that's still, that is a great compliment. I absolutely love this film. It's one of my favorite films of the 1990s. If you haven't seen Thelma and Louise, you're doing yourself an incredible disservice. The ending to this movie, I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, is one of the most iconic endings in film history. They actually have spoofed and satired it in many other things, including in GTA 5, where you could actually see this scene kind of play out at a random point in the game if you go to the right spot. Again, I don't want to tell you what the ending is because I really do want you guys to go check out this movie, and if you do, maybe you want to grab this Criterion 4K Blu-ray.
I bet you even called us beavers on your CB radio, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did.
Damn, I hate that.
Well, here's the reason that we are all here today. That is for Thelma and Louise on 4K from the Criterion Collection. Out of all of Ridley Scott's movies, other than Blade Runner, Alien, and maybe even Gladiator, I think that this is the perfect choice for the Criterion Collection because it was nominated for numerous Academy Awards. Actually, Geena Davis and Susan Sarandon, I believe, are still the only two people to ever be nominated for Best Actress at the same time for the same film, which is incredible because they both did an amazing job in this movie, and they weren't actually the first choices. Jodie Foster and Michelle Pfeiffer were originally supposed to play the characters, but they had to bow out because pre-production took so long, even though Geena Davis was pursuing this role for over a year, and I'm really glad that she got it because it might actually be her best performance. Let's dive into the packaging first. So you get the amazing classic Criterion Digipack that you guys have probably seen in many of their releases, such as Malcolm X and Menace to Society. So you pull it out, it slides out of the side, which is very thick paper here, very good paper stock. Criterion really does a great job with their packaging when they want to. Their standard stuff is just regular standard 4K or Blu-ray casing, but when they bring out the Digipack, they really hold nothing back. So you get some really nice artwork here. You get that like desert, the Arizona desert that they were going for, or the Utah desert. You open it up, you get some reading material in here as well. Really good stuff. Again, really nice paper stock, great stuff. And then you come in here and you get 3 discs with really cool individual disc design, very plain disc design. You know, you get those colors that are featured throughout the film. You get the 4K over here, you get the film downgraded from this 4K to Blu-ray over there, and then you get all special features on the last Blu-ray disc. Now, that doesn't mean that all the special features are on that Blu-ray disc, because there are commentary tracks, numerous commentary tracks actually, that are on both the 4K and the Blu-ray. And then the Blu-ray disc also features some other extras on there as well. But most of your extras are going to be on that third disc, and there are a lot of them actually. There's a couple new interviews that they did back in 2022. There's also the original making of documentary that's about an hour long. That's back from 2001 on its previous 10-year anniversary release. There is also a featurette that was featured on the DVD that they put on here. There's music videos, timelines, storyboards. This is what you're supposed to do with all of your extras. You're supposed to really go out of your way and really cater to the collector, and Criterion knows that. They never hold back on any of their extras, and they really pretty much gave you every extra that has ever been made. A couple of new interviews as well, which I really did appreciate. Would I have liked a new documentary with everybody? Absolutely, but we got the previous making of documentary. You could see though that back then they didn't want to tell you every single thing, because Ridley Scott on the one featurette from the DVD, which was basically an on-set interview, he said, oh yeah, Geena Davis and Susan Sarandon, they were the first choices. I'm glad that I stuck to my guns on them. But from what I understand, that's not true at all, because Michelle Pfeiffer was actually pushing Ridley Scott to do this movie, because originally he wasn't supposed to direct it, but he was like really hesitant about it. But he does, obviously, he said it was one of his favorite films to work on. That original featurette, he said that Susan Sarandon and Geena Davis weren't his first choice. But then when you go on to the other previous making of documentary that came out in 2001, Geena Davis says that she had been pursuing the role for over a year, and that she wasn't the original choice, but she was trying to persuade Ridley Scott to cast her in the lead role. And again, I'm glad that she did, because she turns out just another phenomenal performance. I really can't sell Geena Davis and Susan Sarandon short in this movie. They just are incredible. But what about the quality of that 4K disc? So you get Dolby Vision and HDR10. It's presented in the aspect ratio of 2.39. And visually, this is one of my favorite shot films ever as far as the cinematography goes. It is beautiful throughout. Again, it features like these very faded colors, almost like overexposed scenes, because like the white lights in the background might overwhelm some of the scenes, create like a hazy look, again create like those smoky backgrounds that you kind of would see mostly in a Tony Scott movie. That's why I said that this feels like the most Tony Scott, Ridley Scott movie, because the interiors seem like they're always so smoke filled, so hazy, and I truly love that. All the exterior shots all look just gorgeous. The desert has never looked better. Everything, it's not the kind of film that's going to pop off your screen, and that's by intention. I personally really do enjoy how this film is shot. Just don't expect, like, a lot of like colors to be flying at you. Everything has kind of got this faded look to it, and I think it works really well with this film, and I think the 4K really does a great job illustrating that to us. Now the Blu-ray is just a downgraded version of this 4K, and it still looks really good. So if you do end up choosing just to buy the Blu-ray and not the 4K, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's not the biggest difference in the two, but the 4K, you are going to, especially with the Dolby Vision, you are going to get a lot more contrast. You're going to have deeper blacks in certain scenes. The colors are going to be a little bit more vibrant, and the resolution increase is pretty noticeable. But other than that, it's not the world's biggest jump between the Blu-ray and 4K. So if you are a little bit tight on money and you really want this, I still think that the Blu-ray is a good choice, because you will get pretty much everything except the 4K disc. Now, as far as audio goes, you only get a DTS HD 5.1 on here, and it's a really good DTS HD 5.1. It makes great use of all of your speakers. I'm actually surprised at how much rear speaker I was getting out of this. And at one point, my wife, she was in the bedroom, she called me and she's like, it's so loud, because it really is a great audio track. It's not the greatest, don't get me wrong, an Atmos track would have been cool, but as far as a regular DTS HD 5.1, I have just no complaints about it. It was almost perfect. It matched the film fantastically. This movie, again, has a great Hans Zimmer score, a great licensed soundtrack. The dialogue was crisp and clear. Every scene, I had no issues with the audio. Pretty much a perfect audio track. So overall, I have almost no complaints about what they did with this. Every choice that they made, down from packaging to visuals to audio to extras, are all perfect. I think so far for 2023, this is the best that we have gotten. Criterion knocks it out of the park again. This is what I expect Criterion to do when they do these special releases. And if you haven't gotten this yet, and you can wait till there's a 50% off sale from either Criterion or Barnes & Nobles, you will steal this at whatever price that's at, because at full price, it's 110% worth it. If you are a fan of Thelma and Louise, you will love this 4K Blu-ray combo pack. I promise you that. If I was going to give this a score out of 1 to 10, I can't take any points off for anything. This is a 10 out of 10. You absolutely have to see this, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed by it. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me here on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, you can simply just like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to grab this, we have an Amazon affiliate link that I will leave in the description below. It costs you no extra money, and it really does help the channel out. And then, guys, after you're done doing all of that, I just want you to maybe go get your own convertible with your own best friend. Go out, cruising on those streets, and tell all your friends about us. We'll be seeing you around.